Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Do you think that RFK endorsement means a whole lot? You know, he was polling, it was down to single digits last I had checked before he had dropped out. But do you think it dawns on anyone, hey, maybe Trump's not Hitler if we have a literal Kennedy, the crown jewel of Democrat aristocracy? We have a Kennedy endorsing him. Now, you've seen your Team Blue friends online justify it. Oh, he's the crazy, wacky one, and all the other Kennedys hate Trump and think he's Hitler, so he's still probably... Do you think that changes anyone's mind? Because I don't hear a whole lot of people actually arguing against some of the points that RFK is making, whether it be about, you know, the vaccines or the lockdowns or some of these other policies. But, you know, I get hung up on this quote here. By the way, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. But there was this one part over the weekend. I clipped this because this is the part that why I don't totally agree with his solutions. I agree with his complaints. I agree that there is a problem that he's pointing at. Now, he and I have a different way to get to the solution here. But we should just be having these conversations. This is what I like about RFK is we're not talking about where people who are confused about their gender can go to the bathroom or abortion or these very shallow, oh, you're weird. He's just so weird. That's not what we're supposed to be talking about. We're supposed to be talking about how we govern the country, how we arrange our statecraft. And so this is the kind of stuff we should be talking about, even though if I disagree with it in principle.
These agencies, the FDA, USDA, and CDC, all of them are controlled by giant for-profit corporations.
Agreed.
75% of the FDA's funding doesn't come from taxpayer, it comes from pharma.
Agreed.
And pharma executives and consultants and lobbyists cycle in and out of these agencies with President Trump's backing. I'm going to change that. We're going to staff these agencies with honest scientists and doctors who are free from industry funding. We're going to make sure the decisions of consumers, doctors, and patients are informed by unbiased science. A sick child is the best thing for the pharmaceutical industry. When American children or adults get sick with a chronic condition, they're put on medication for their entire life. Imagine what will happen when Medicare starts paying for Ozempic, which costs $1,500 a month, and it's being recommended for children as young as 6. All for a condition, obesity, that is completely preventable and barely even existed 100 years ago.
All right. So I love just at least having this conversation because this is the kind of stuff we're supposed to be talking about. We're not supposed to be talking about, like, he's a football coach. She called me on my birthday. Now we're talking because a lot of that I agree with and you agree with. You're right. These government agencies have been seized by big private corporations. Yes, you're right. They are offering Ozempic for kids when they really just need to maybe go run a couple of laps, a couple miles, maybe do some cross country. Obesity it's not an issue that even needs drugs. Maybe slap some food out of your mouth, miss a calorie, exercise, do some squat thrusts, do some, I don't know, lunges or squat, I don't know. It's like such an easily fixable problem that you don't need drugs for. Your kid's fat. Well, let's get him some drugs. No. Let's teach him how to exercise. Let's teach him how to eat properly. Let's teach them how to be, here's the word, healthy. Oh my goodness. You know how your body works? Yeah, when you control what you stuff in your pie hole and also control getting off the couch every once in a while or getting off your computer chair and actually exercising, amazing benefits happen. But let's not have all that. I want a pill. I want a shot. That's what we want. We don't want to work for it. We want to eat Bluebell, the cookie two-step. We don't want to exercise, and we want to somehow look like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Well, it's not going to happen, and we need to stop telling kids that, or at least acting like that's a thing. You know, maybe Lizzo's like the downfall of our health for this next generation. That's like, it's not cool being unhealthy. It's not cool wheezing after you go up a flight and a half of stairs. It's not cool not fitting into a Southwest Airlines seat. It's not cool dying of a heart condition in your 60s when you could have lived at least another 20, if not 30 years, if only you had been more healthy. But we're not teaching them to be healthy. We're giving them a pill. We're giving them a shot. We're making them sick. So that discussion deserves to be had because I think he's right in diagnosing one of the problems. Yes, Our federal agencies have been captured. They are controlled by big money and lobbied interest. But it's just like all the other institutions that we were talking about this on Friday on the James Show, if you were here. You know, most every major corporation has been captured by the same people. Most of our other institutions, AARP, the American Medical Association, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, universities, pop stars, rock stars, rap stars, movie stars. No, remember, I was just making the case that you're not a rebel if you're woke. You're on the side of all of the institutions, all the moneyed interest, all the big powers, big power players in the world. But he's right. That includes the CDC, the FDA, the FBI. Did the FBI go hide incriminating evidence of Trump from the last election? No, it was Hunter Biden's laptop that they had for an entire year that you would have never heard about if it was up to the FBI was doing illegal activities here. They were doing shady stuff, not to help out Team Red, but to help out Team Blue. Same thing with the CDC during all of COVID. They were the excuse for all the COVID tyrants to violate your rights. Well, the CD says it's so dangerous, so we can't have you going to church. Excuse me, freedom of religion? I'm sorry, the CDC, I just trust the expert. I'm just going by what the experts told me. Yeah, the CDC is a wholly captured institution. Same thing with the FDA. Kennedy was making a good point about the FDA. We need to be having these conversations. This is the kind of, like I said, even though I disagree, and I'll even tell you where I disagree. The solution isn't to put RFK in charge of these things. The solution is to pretty much get rid of them totally. Now, we do need like a system of weights and measures and make sure if someone says it's vitamin C, someone can test to make sure it's vitamin C, or someone sells you a gallon of gas out of the pump, they can have a testing mechanism to make sure they're not cheating you by only giving you 9/10 of a gallon. You know, that the Department of Agriculture does that. So there's some small little functions, but like 90, maybe even more % of what they do, totally unconstitutional. If you need to do some of this stuff, it needs to be done at the state level. Oh, you want to have 50 different FDAs? Well, maybe. Why not? We have 50 different alcohol commissions. We seem to be getting plenty of beer for cheap with that system going. Why not? Why not decentralize the power? Because when you concentrate power in D.C., you increase the ability and really just the convenience of people who want to corrupt it. So that's what I like about RFK. I don't like a lot of his policy positions. I don't like a lot of his solutions. But it's an intelligent conversation, and the problems that he identifies, he's right on a lot of those. It's the same reason I like The Daily Show. I had friends, my liberal friends were like, why do you watch The Daily Show? I'm like, well, he's right on half the stuff. He constantly goes out and points out to you how inefficient and comically cartoonish the government is and politicians are, and how inefficient government agencies are. The only part where I disagree with Jon Stewart is his solution is usually more government. I want less. That's it. But the problems, these people deserve ridicule. The criticism is real. He talks about real issues. So I think overall, RFK is a good addition to the conversation. I'm just not sure if we're changing anybody's mind. Do you? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Did RFK change your mind or have any influence whatsoever? 800-288-9227. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk to Victoria Coates from the Heritage Foundation about this is the third anniversary of the withdrawal from Afghanistan. What's it look like now? That's next on the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We're having an epic day here on WBAP because we started off our broadcast day with the WBAP Morning Show live from these studios here next to the AAC downtown. And then Casey Bartholomew came on right after that. Now, Dan Bongino usually does his show from Florida, but filling in was another local Dallas radio guy, Jim Verity, who's probably in a home studio up in Flower Mound or something. And then me. So we've had an all Dallas radio day thus far. It will continue with Chris Kroc after Mark Levin. And if not for Mark Levin's 3 hours, we would have a 100% Dallas origin broadcast schedule. That'd be so cool. Victoria Coates is back on with the Heritage Foundation. I wanted to talk to you because I saw Donald Trump today at some sort of memorial or ceremony, or what was the cause here? It's the third anniversary of the Afghan withdrawal, but this looked like a memorial of some sort.
It was, and actually Dan Bongino was here at Heritage with us all day today, which is why he's not on your airwaves. But for another very important reason that we can talk about, which has to do with the assassination attempt on President Trump. But the reason the foreign president was out at Arlington Cemetery, which is our most sacred ground here in Washington, D.C., where our fallen heroes are laid to rest, is he went to pay tribute to the 13 heroes and heroine who lost their lives at Abbey Gate 3 years ago today in Afghanistan, in a completely unnecessary terrorist suicide bomber attack that should have been prevented for so many different reasons. First and foremost, by not having the botched surrender of Afghanistan ordered by President Biden and Vice President Harris. And so the former president went to Arlington to lay wreath and lay flowers on individual graves and do honor to their memories, while President Biden was snoozing on the beach in Delaware and Vice President Harris was getting apparently update briefings.
Well, who put this event together? Was this a Trump campaign event, or did Trump attend a memorial that someone else put together? Because it would make sense if Biden didn't show up if this was a Trump event.
No, it was the families put it together, and they invited the former president. They did not invite President Biden.
Oh, so the families didn't even want him there.
No.
I bet you they would have taken him if he had volunteered to come, though.
I don't think so.
Maybe not. Okay.
Go ahead.
You talked to them. What was their thoughts?
No, it was remarkable. Around the time the Kabul book came out, Jerry Dunleavy's book, I attended an event with them, and I asked them, are you guys all conservatives politically? And they said no. They said some of us are very liberal, some of us are conservative, and some of us have never voted because we're military families, and sometimes they don't like to vote. They serve whoever's in power. And they said that we have all been so abused and mistreated by this administration that, we are united in our desire to get to the bottom of what happened to our sons and daughter, and to hold someone in this administration accountable. Nobody has lost their job over what went down 3 years ago.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right. I doubt anyone's going to lose their job if it hadn't happened in the last 3 years. What was Bongino doing with Heritage Foundation today? Can we talk about that?
We can. Okay. We don't do secret stuff here at Heritage, despite what you might read in the news. But we had a congressional forum. You can't call it a formal hearing, but it was a group of congressmen. We had Andy Biggs, we had Eli Crane, we had Matt Gaetz, we had Cordy Mills, and we had Chip Roy from a little south of you, all come together to talk to Dan and to Eric Prince and to Ben Schaefer about what, as law enforcement professionals, all three of them from different angles, what we had learned since the attempt on the former president's life in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 12th. And particularly for Dan, as a former Secret Service agent, I think it was really important to hear his testimony on how this was just layer after layer of incompetence, to the extent that it really becomes intention. I mean, if you are that incompetent, somebody higher up wants the system to fail. So if your listeners are interested, we have the video on heritage.org. The congressmen have all reposted it as well.
I'm looking forward to that. He's been doing some amazing shows about the Trump shooting. And of course, we expected the rest of the media to sort of memory hold this, but he's been keeping it alive with the constant promise that there's more information that's going to come out that he knows that he can't say because he doesn't want to burn his sources. But do you have any inkling of that? Is there some big breaking piece of information that could come out and blow this whole story open?
Well, that's always possible. And both that and then the previous event, we did back-to-back events on the Secret Service. The previous event we did was on some Iranian influence in the United States with Congressman Chaffetz and Susan Crabtree of Real Clear Politics. It was also very, very interesting. And they intimated that they thought there was another shoe to drop on the Iranian front and possible infiltration of the government rather than infiltration of the shooter on July 12th. So I think there is a ton of more information out there. The administration is doing absolutely nothing to get after it. You would think in their own self-interest, Biden and Harris, who will at some point both be former senior administration officials, would want to get to the bottom of this, as I said, out of sheer self-interestedness. But no, there is absolutely no urgency out of the White House, and it all has to come from the Congress.
Thank you very much, Victoria Coates, Heritage Foundation. I appreciate you being on the James Show yet again.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, now let me ask you, did this guy act alone? The Crooks guy that shot Donald Trump? I mean, seriously, he no training, just went out and got his own rangefinder, somehow sneaked through the greatest hyperpower of the world's $11 trillion defense budget to squeeze off around and pop Trump in the ear. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. We'll break down some of the polls coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. Welcome back to the big show. Well, the word joy came up over and over and over for the last couple of weeks. They were running it into the ground before the Democrat National Convention, and then, of course, they finally buried it and ran it all the way into the ground in the Democrat National Convention. So this new overlap, joy in the politics realm. How about we talk to the lady who wrote the book on joy in politics? Isn't your book literally The Joy in Politics, or Joy in Politics, or what's the title, Lisa Miller?
It is actually called The Business of Joy.
There you go. Lisa W. Miller's on the James Show here. So this new joy focus, this isn't something they were doing a month ago. This is something that is just really last 2-3 weeks been prominent. But Lisa, it seems to be working.
Right. Well, let me just give you a little bit of backstory. So back in March of 2020, I started measuring joy over fear during the middle of the pandemic. So people thought I was crazy, but joy ended up being a leading indicator of the economic growth. So I don't know if anybody read the book out there, but clearly this pivot to using this word joy was a very conscious choice. And it actually is something that could unlock economic growth if people believe the politics underneath of it. So it's just an interesting, fascinating word choice that is very much a part of that campaign.
So it's interesting to see that be used in such a political, non-economic realm and have a similar effect.
Exactly. And this whole notion of joy over fear, as you saw in the convention, Bill Clinton mentioned it like 5 times. Oprah Winfrey was like singing the word joy, and people just need to feel better. Even though some of the economic measures up until recently had been moving in the right direction, consumers just don't feel very happy. But what's fascinating, again, when I went to college, I was a political science major before I turned to marketing, and words that the DNC is using, freedom, patriotism, all of these words typically are words that in my data actually tends to skew more conservative and more Republican. So I think it's a very conscious choice to get people in the middle. Now, on the other side, the Trump campaign is using words like democracy, which is also a word choice that tends to skew more Democrat. So it's just crazy to me how words matter in today's election, and both sides are doing the best they can to, woo the voters to vote for them.
Well, it also seems like this word joy is being used strategically in tandem with weird to sort of create a distinction. Do you want to vote for the joy team, or do you want to vote for the weird team?
Well, it was so funny that you mentioned that. Literally, I do watch both sides. I'm Switzerland. I'm a consumer strategist, not a political pundit. But what's fascinating is I did kind of monitor that. Like, how many times did they say joy? How many did they say the word weird? And they are absolutely using those two to contrast joy versus fear. On the other side, Trump is still talking about freedom and democracy and safety. So the words are similar, but in macro terms, but this word joy is definitely standing out on the DNC side.
Well, it does seem to be working, but has it peaked?
Well, I do 1,000 surveys every single month to not only measure just what's going on with the election, but just the economy and restaurants and movies. So I will be watching closely month to month to see what's going on. But typically, from the political pundit view, the DNC, the convention, they peak. So we'll have to watch with close eyes just to see if it holds.
If you were advising someone to counter this joy offensive, is there a certain word you can use to sort of break that spell or counter it?
Well, I do think joy is a pretty strong word. So I think what's underneath of it is the positive emotional feeling. So I'm not sure if I have a specific word, but I do think that people want to move forward into a positive hope. You go back to, when Reagan won or even when Obama won. So both sides of the political party have won on hope. And I think that that's the word that maybe that's another word that they could use. But right, positivity, I think, is going to win this time.
Right, because Obama straight up used the word hope. That was it. Hope and change. That was his bit. And then Reagan had the whole Morning in America campaign that he was probably going to win that one anyway, but that certainly helped.
Right. Well, and I think what's fascinating, again, like I can kind of geek out on all the political data, but it's both have experience in the White House. One is president, one is vice president, but both are running as kind of the change maker, and they're running as the challenger, not the incumbent. And that in and of itself is something we really haven't seen from a consumer marketing and messaging standpoint.
Two incumbents running as challengers. That is new.
Yes, it is. It's a new world, isn't it?
All right, Lisa W. Miller, where can they find your work outside of WBAP?
If you hashtag Bring More Joy, you can find all the social media or on LinkedIn at Lisa W. Miller.
All right, Lisa W. Miller, author of The Business of Joy. Thank you for being on The James Show on News Talk 820 WBAP. Now on FM at 93.3. I don't think they can ride this whole joy wave all the way through November. They're going to have to come up with something. They're going to have some press conferences. Kamala's trying to weasel out of this debate by saying, well, I want to change some of the rules. Some of these rules aren't fair. I never agreed to this. And if y'all don't change these rules, and we may not have a debate on September 10th. Did you know that? Details coming up next. 800-288-9227. Will the Joy campaign work? 800-288-9227. It's The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Garrett, are you old enough to know what this song's about? Yes, no? Okay. All right. Well, you got a nice Google test. Go Google the lyrics after the show. Don't do it. I need you to concentrate right now because we're talking about some very important things here, like the election that's happening. And look, this is the home stretch where there's about $2 billion that is spent on marketing for what feels like 7 people in this country. Who doesn't know what they're voting for yet? Who has made it this far? Like, well, I don't know who's running. What do they stand for? I don't know. So we're spending $2 billion to get the votes to change the minds of really. Let's be honest. There's only a handful of people who are open-minded enough at this point to have their minds changed. Isn't this the weirdest part of the election cycle? Is this last little 2 months here, this little home stretch? Because the people who are already entrenched, the people who just live and eat, breathe politics, they are so worked up and rabid at this point and just throwing spears over the fence. There's a lot of us who we have our opinions, but it doesn't define us, or we don't get animated enough to make it part of our identity. But we know what we're doing. We know what's going on. We know what the issues are and who stands for what. Who are these booger eaters who just don't know enough? I don't have enough information to make an opinion. You don't? No one? Because I don't meet these people. I don't know these people. I don't know one person is like, I don't know who I'm voting for. It could be anybody. I don't know. And so I have to keep reminding myself about this process that most people go through in slow motion. You're more liberal when you're young, and you gradually just sort of float over to the right side of the political spectrum as the years go along. You know, as you get a mortgage, as you get a family, as you pay taxes, as you start a business, as you do all these other things that kind of trip people up and change their view of statecraft. And I think the only thing that really makes sense is this $2 billion of advertising is either trying to accelerate that process or retard that process. And I didn't say retard like that. I mean like the literal use of the word, trying to slow it down, if not bring it to a halt. Because there's not like this widely known phenomenon of young conservatives growing up and drifting into liberalism. It does happen. Of course, there's converts that go both ways. But generally speaking, the ebb and flow goes from young and liberal to old and conservative. So I like to look at these people who actually post their stories. You're familiar with the walkaway people? So the walk away is the people that finally wake up. They thought they were woke, and then they wake up and they're like, wait a second. Are we the baddies? I think I'm voting for the wrong team. And they explain how that process happened. Now, these are the people I'm interested in. I don't know these people, so I only have to find them online. I think the guy who really started this, Brandon Straka, does that ring a bell? Do you ever see that floating around on your Twitter? And he gets referenced in a lot of other articles about walk away. But him and a few other guys did this in like 2018 after they realized some of the media's lies about Trump. And I love these stories because one guy talks about the one thing that started his walkaway journey is they say Trump made fun of the handicapped guy, the guy with cerebral palsy, because he put his arm up and made like a goofy noise and did his twisted up wrist up by his chest. And someone shows you a picture of the reporter that he's talking about, and it's a guy with cerebral palsy, and you're like, oh my goodness, that's some offensive stuff. And then the rebuttal comes, and you see that Donald Trump has actually done that same gesture dozens of times for dozens of people, none of whom are handicapped. So when Donald Trump says, I didn't know that guy had cerebral palsy, all I'd done is read his column. I've never seen his wrist or whatever. But you've seen him do that. He does that symbol making fun of Ted Cruz at one of his live events. He did the and put his arm up by his chest. And well, Ted Cruz clearly doesn't have cerebral palsy. Ted Cruz isn't disabled. That's not a gesture he was doing to make fun of disabled people. That's just a mannerism he's done for when people are caught in an awkward situation and they don't have a ready answer. And look, that's not my story. This is a story I'm passing along from Walk Away. And so then he was like, well, if they lied about that, what else did they lie about? And then he did some more research. It's like, well, it turns out Joe Rogan really didn't take horse dewormer. Well, it turns out masks really don't work. Turns out Jussie Smollett wasn't really mugged. Turns out. And so they start uncovering all of these little truths. And after a while, you take enough bricks off the wall, you don't have a wall anymore. And the conversion stories are crucial. Here's one from a woman who she says she's worked in Democrat campaigns for both the House and the Senate and volunteered for them before. And she volunteered to work at the DNC, the Democrat National Convention in Chicago this year. And when she came back, she walked away and posted her video explaining why.
I just got back from the DNC where I signed up to volunteer. And when I initially had signed up to volunteer, Joe Biden was still the nominee. It wasn't yet Kamala Harris. I've worked in progressive politics for a long time. I have worked for many different Democratic candidates, Senate candidates, House candidates, even some Democratic organizations. When I first got into politics, I thought that Democrats were the party of the people. And at the DNC this week, I felt like I was in a building with the most elite and out-of-touch people in the entire world. It very much felt like, let's just have a huge party and forget all of our problems because the vibes are brat. And when I was there listening to the speeches, I felt myself feeling mad because I didn't hear anything about the economy. Definitely not in Kamala's speech and not very much in the others as well. Instead, I heard generic platitudes, things like joy and respect and integrity, and what does that even mean? When and how did we just become the party of academia and affluence? Because that's what we are right now. How can we ever say that we're going to fight corporate power or give a voice back to those communities that have been left behind when above the delegates on the floor in levels and levels and rings of suites with donors and corporations that we're literally looking down on the people below from above? That's what Chris Cuomo said, and he's absolutely right. I went to the DNC this year hoping that I would feel reconnected to the Democratic Party, that I would have more of a sense of understanding of Kamala and her candidacy and what she stood for. But instead, I ended up leaving and feeling the opposite, more disconnected and alone than ever. And I don't think I can support Kamala Harris for president. I don't even know if I can call myself a Democrat anymore. I don't know who I'm going to be supporting, but I know it's not her. And for once, I'm not afraid to say it.
Why would you ever be afraid to say that? Oh, that's right, because you get ostracized and people think you run the risk of being called a Nazi. You run the risk of being called Hitler. You run the risk of being called weird. You step out of line with the politically accepted positions and you lose friends. That's unfortunate. So I want to hear, do you have a walkaway story? I was never a Democrat, so I don't have a walkaway story. I can say that I sort of was almost shoved onto the right wing of the spectrum by one issue. There's one issue that I changed my mind on from young James to, I'm not old. Yeah, okay, I'm old. But that was climate change. Once I figured out that was a farce, like so many other policies that follow it, make it almost impossible to be on Team Blue if you don't believe in climate change. So like, well, if you don't believe in climate change, then what are CAFE standards for? It's just for controlling the auto industry. Well, if you don't believe in climate change, well, what's all this renewable power for? It's just for controlling the generation of electricity. Well, if you don't believe in climate change, then what's the deal with plastic straws? That's just to torture you. That's just paper straws are just to remind you that we're in an emergency situation. It's the same thing as the mask. They didn't do anything except remind you that things are not okay. And the world is so unsettled, we can't let you have your preference of straws. We can't let you breathe unfiltered air, just like every human being did for the last 200,000 years of human evolution. No. That's how dangerous things are now. We're in an emergency situation. Do you have a walkaway story? I would love to hear it. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. If it's that delicate, you can use a fake name. Just say my name's George. 800-288-9227. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. The next little chip that's being played here in Decision 2024, we are just 2 months away from the big presidential election. And here in Texas, our attorney general is taking a nice big battering ram at illegal voting. First off, he's investigating reports of people registering illegals to vote. Some of these rumors have turned out to be unfounded. Some of them actually have some sort of backing in truth. So whenever you see online, they're like, well, this was a lie. We found out that Maria Bartiromo said on her Sunday show outside of the DMV, they had tables set up, and that turned out to not be true. Well, not all of them are true, but some of them are. There is such thing as illegals being registered to vote. And then you add on to that, there was a purge. There was a purge of like 1.1 million from the voter rolls here in Texas. Now, a few people are upset about that. It's like, why would you want to purge the voter rolls if not to thwart democracy? No, purging the voter rolls actually upholds the integrity of democracy. If you're the cheating kind, and I'm not pointing any fingers or naming any names, but if you're the type that likes to take people who didn't vote, but they're registered to vote, and then you can fill out a ballot on their behalf and, I don't know, maybe mail it in or drop it in an absentee ballot box so you don't actually have to show an ID at the ballot box on the day of the election to vote. That it's a very convenient thing for you to have 1 million extra dead weight on the voter rolls. Because one of the challenges you have if you don't have this list of, dead people or people who moved or voting somewhere else or didn't update or whatever, that don't be on the voter rolls, then you can make these ballots in advance, these fake ballots in advance. I'm not saying anyone did it. I'm not saying that's what happened in 2020. I'm just saying if you are the cheating kind, this is very helpful for you. Because one of the problems you run into is if you fill out fake ballots for someone who's already voting or someone who's going to vote on election day, well, then that one might not get counted for you. So what you want is you either have to wait till everybody votes, and then you can extend the counting period and fill out the ballots in the meantime, which I'm not saying that happened. It sounds like it would fit in some of the timeline of recent elections. You don't want them purged from the voter rolls. You want dead people on the voter rolls. So what he's doing here isn't trying to keep people from voting, because that's how it's being sold to you. He's trying to keep your vote from being canceled out by a fake vote. So 1.1 million voter registrations were purged. I really don't understand the argument against this. I understand what they're saying, and it sounds like a thinly veiled excuse to cheat. Like, I really don't get, why would you want to keep dead people on the voter rolls? Why would you want to keep the state of Texas or any state in the union from going through every once in a while and periodically purging the voter rolls of people who are known to either be dead, be illegal, have moved to another state and registered there, have moved to another part of this state and is registered twice, could be duplicate. Why would you not want to clean up the voter rolls? What is the honest? What's the honest reason for that? Now, if I wouldn't mind if someone called in, they're like, dude, It's hard enough to cheat as it is. Can you just leave them on there so we can cheat? I'll take that call, 800-288-9227, but no one's ever going to say that in 100 years. Not with a straight face. So that's one of the another tack that Ken Pax has taken on. And, this happens in other states too. I've had the joy, and I mean that totally sarcastically, of having to live in a couple of states besides Texas. You'll notice I came back as soon as I could. And they do similar things in other states. And people gripe that this is going to prevent people from being able to exercise their right to vote. This is going to upend democracy. And you know what happens? They have an election and there's no complaints after that. What you should be looking for right now, if you're going to make your case, show me the people. Show me all the people in these other states where they purge the voter rolls and they show up. And now people who are legally allowed to vote weren't allowed to vote. Someone had their vote taken away because of a purge. You don't hear those stories. It's always this hypothetical, in the future there's going to be some negative consequences. And this happens in other venues too. It's the same thing they do with climate change. Well, if we don't get control of, all the means of energy production and the most powerful economy on planet Earth, then we're all going to be living with hotter temperatures in the future. Well, yeah, but that's what you said in all your catastrophes that you said 40, 50 years ago. None of those predictions have come true. Why aren't you leaning on that? Why aren't you leaning on the idea of, we told you we should have controlled this around 1980, 1990. We told you that the ice cap would be gone, or that Glacier National Park wouldn't have any more glaciers on it, or there wouldn't be any more snows on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. But all of their predictions fail. This is another one of these arenas. It's not, as geologic, but it still stands the same pattern. One of my favorite examples is in Alabama. They did a voter purge. They went through the Trump election, and then there were a whole bunch of changes to the state voting rules immediately. And it's not just because Trump was elected. It was because we were coming off of COVID. We were coming out of the coronavirus emergency where we had to change all the rules. And so they got rid of a whole bunch of dead people and ineligible people in the voter rolls. They got rid of mail-in voting. They severely restricted absentee ballots. They required IDs to vote. And what was being told to you, I don't know if you heard this because you probably weren't listening to their local media, but the storyline was they're doing this to prevent black people from voting, minorities from voting, young people from voting, poor people from voting, old people from voting. It's just these evil Republicans. That's the only reason they're doing this. They're just lying about voter integrity. They're just lying about keeping us from cheating. And then what happened? Turnout went up. Like the exact opposite of all the predictions of the people who were saying this was based on trying to, and to just throw in an adjective there. They're trying to discriminate against either minorities or women or old people or young people or poor people. No, turnout went up. So your predictions were not just like wrong, like turnout didn't change. They were in the wrong direction completely, 180 degrees. So make no mistake, when people complain about what happened in Texas this week, what happened with our voter rolls and purging 1.1 million, the record of history of these people who argue is usually wrong. In my observation, this is what I've seen. And they even break it down for you. Ken Paxton's office, they did the job. It's a long article. I'm not going to bore you with all of it, but they break it down. They'll tell you, like, out of the 1.1 million, X amount of thousands and thousands of thousands were people who we have confirmed to be dead. A bunch of people moved. Some people moved out of the country. Some people moved out of the state. Some people moved to another part of the state. Some of them were duplicates. And you know what? A few thousand were. It's like finding a unicorn. They were actually illegals that were registered to vote. I thought that wasn't happening. I thought that was impossible. I thought that was just a myth made up to scare you. So good job, Ken Paxton. Fight the good fight. I hope it works. Even if, look, the disappointing part about election integrity in Texas is this is a red state. This is a state that was always going to go red. Doesn't matter what happens. I don't even know if they could come up with enough fake ballots to steal this state. But what are they doing in those swing states? Do they have an AG that's fighting this? That's fighting the registration of illegals and registration of people who aren't eligible to vote in the swing state? Is there someone doing this in Georgia? Is there someone doing this in Michigan or Wisconsin? Is there someone doing this in Ohio, North Carolina? Nothing we can do about that. Not trying to be pessimistic, just being a realist here. You can be all happy about Texas, but we're not the ones we got to worry about. Looking at you, Arizona. 800-288-9227. Are we going to have a legit election? 800-288-9227. Coming up next, we're going to talk to a former Secret Service agent about the updates in the Trump shooting investigation on The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. 800-288-9227 if you want to jump in the conversation. 800-288-9227. So there's been a lot to be made from the aftermath of the DNC. One thing that I was telling you last week that I'm following up on, it's not like I'm just ruminating and focusing too much on the past, is the real legacy of this. Is it going to continue the upward trend in the polling that Kamala Harris has experienced? Because she is slightly ahead in the national poll, and we know the popular vote isn't what determines the election. And if you break it down by state, Trump's still ahead. But the margin got thinner. The lead got a little bit smaller, a little bit more tenuous, not so sure. Now, if you go, we're in the point now that it gets real cloudy. If you want to go find some polling outfit that comes up with the results that you want, that make you feel better, you can find it. If you want to find the polling results that comes up with almost the exact same thing, but just for the other side, you can find it. That's how close the race is. Like, there's no poll saying that Texas is going to go blue, but you can find some polls that say Pennsylvania is going to go for Kamala. You can find some of them that say that Pennsylvania is going to go for Trump. Same thing with all the swing states. So I find some really misleading coverage. Look, Fox News is not immune from this. They tend to focus on the polls that they love, just like MSNBC and CNN tend to focus on the polls that they love. But that's the beauty of Real Clear Politics. RealClearPolitics.com is the place where they do the average of the polls. Then they'll do the average of the polls based state by state on the electoral map. And then they'll do it with the toss-ups. They'll do it without the toss-ups. And if this sounds complicated, it's not. Don't think that, oh man, that's so cool they can figure this out and tell me. No, you can go figure it out too. Don't have that attitude like, I don't know how that stuff works. You click on it. It's made for people like you and me who don't have, there's nothing technical about this. I just click this state. Oh, look, it turned a different color. And then I click it again. And, oh, it turns the other color. But the dangerous part about this is how hard it's going to be to trust anything from either side of the media from now until the election. And this is so, just makes my eyes roll back in my head so hard it almost snaps the ligaments. Because both sides are going to say from here on out, everything is good for my candidate. Everything that happened is bad for the other candidate. I told you the other candidate was evil. I told you the other candidate was a communist. I told you the other candidate was a fascist. Don't worry. We've got 2 months left, and the hyperpartisanship will start to winnow away after November 5th. But right now, I think one of the most important states that you can look at is Wisconsin. Kamala Harris is winning Wisconsin. Now, it is within the margin of error, so it's listed as a toss-up state. But, I mean, it's just barely. When you look at Pennsylvania and all the polls, Trump's clearly winning that. It's still listed as a toss-up as well. You know, I'm very I have a terrible record of predicting election results, and I feel less confident about either side's chances of victory than I have in a long time. I wasn't so sure that Trump was going to win in 2016. Pleasant surprise when so many of these swing states flipped his way to end the night. I mean, a lot of people were shocked, but I had a big question mark about that. I thought Trump was going to cruise to re-election in the last election cycle until COVID happened. And it's kind of hard to argue with me on that. And in that one, I just threw it in my hands. I didn't even pretend to make a prediction. And, you kind of notice something. When I first started in talk radio covering the news, I had some strong opinions, even though I knew the least compared to what I know now. And as I've gotten older, it's amazing how less sure I am of myself when it comes to the turnout of these events that have happened. How many elections have I been through as a talk radio host? 2004, 8, 12, 16, 17. This is my sixth one. I've realized I am not very good at this. But part of the reasons why we were so thrown off in 2020, you know why. When they never did this before. In all the other elections I had covered, they didn't stop counting the votes in 5 swing states, turn the lights off, cover the windows, kick the observers out, wait an hour, turn the lights back on. Oh, look, here's a whole bunch of whole new votes. We had never seen that before. So the elder, wiser James is trying to think, not necessarily as who's going to win or who's going to lose based on what the polls are saying, is what janky tricks have I not thought of that are going to happen on election night? I think that's the new paradigm we're living under, not just paradigm roofs, but the political paradigm that we're living under. Do you have any idea what the October surprise is going to be? Do you have any idea if there's going to be some shenanigans on election night, or some paper ballots, or some voting machines blinking, or some pipe gets a leak and so we have to shut down is there going to be any of that? What do you think is going to happen? I saw a pretty good prediction that the October surprise is probably going to be a big new announcement by Biden and Kamala Harris of some gigantic student loan payoff, buying votes, just as classic and old as democracy itself. What do you think the October surprise will be? I would love to hear your thoughts. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. And the question is, what will the October surprise be? I've seen some guesses here, and it's ranged everything from another assassination attempt, if not a successful one this time around. Some people are expecting a surprise announcement. Just a coincidence. 1 month before y'all go to the polls, we found a way to pay off your student loan debt. So multi hundreds of billions of dollars of student loan debt relief. That might sway the election. That's not a bad guess on what the October surprise could be. Some people aren't expecting an October surprise because, hey, why do they need to pull that off if they're not going to do a honest job counting the votes? Why even bother with that if you're just going to stick in some ballots on your own? Oh, that's a good call too. What do you think? 800-288-9227. This is Jim and Saxy. You're on the James Show. What do you think the October surprise is going to be, Jim?
Well, I kind of fear that it may not be an October surprise. It may be sooner than that. And I think that they are so scared of, by they, I mean the Democrat Party is so scared of losing that they would probably do anything to avoid losing. And if they think that they will, we may find out the reason for all of these military-age men, including Chinese nationals and such, coming across our southern border.
So
I hate to think of that, but I fear that they are that desperate to hang on to power that we may find out why they're here.
Well, I hate this idea that they're just desperate to hang on to power. They're not desperate. There's $6 trillion worth of spending that's associated with. Of course, they want to hang on to power. It's the most powerful position in human history. So you don't have to try and ascribe some sort of desperation onto it. That's the natural course of government. Of course, they love to hang on to power. So you don't see an October surprise in a traditional sense. You see sort of the backdoor sneaky vote thing.
I think they would try some kind of a violence to the point where they could say, we need to postpone the elections because of national security or whatever, or go back to all mail-in votes, something like that. I think Trump set them back so far in their plans last time, and they are really serious about not letting him in. And I think, all of the attempts to put him in jail and to, just to take him out one way or another hasn't worked so far. And so there's no telling. I just wouldn't put anything past the point of possibility in order for them to, postpone or cancel our ability to have a regular election.
Yeah, they've tried to ruin his business. They tried to seize his assets. They've taken him to court, convicted him of felonies. They want to put him in jail. He got his ear shot. Still not quitting. They're going to have to do something, Jim.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. He's able to come through all of that. He's still going. He's like the Energizer Bunny. So
yeah, and then there's me over here who I would retire at age 55 if I could. In fact, I'd probably
me too.
Probably retire on Thursday if I could. Thank you very much, Jim. Eric in College Station, you're on WBAP. What do you foresee as an October surprise?
Well, I'm not sure what's up their sleeve, but I kind of agree with the previous caller. But I think you're going to see more, just as you saw Tulsi Gabbard, put her endorsement in for Trump. I think you're going to see some surprising figures. Somebody like a Joe Manchin, somebody like Fetterman in Pennsylvania. that are going to say, truly, look, the Democratic Party has lost its way, or the Democrats, they're moving towards Marxism, towards progressivism, and that's just not something that you can, idly stand by and watch happen. So I think you're going to see some really interesting endorsements coming up very, very soon.
Crossing the aisle endorsements, huh?
Yes, absolutely, because, they don't want to see their party turn towards this just as much as, America doesn't want to turn towards communism and socialism as well. So I think you're going to see a unification there, and hopefully, there'll be a landslide. We'll see, but that's kind of what it's looking like.
Well, the two people that you named, your suspects, they make sense because they are on Team Blue with a Team Red constituency. John Fetterman, of course, in Pennsylvania, which is a leaning red state, and then West Virginia, Joe Manchin in there in a deep red state. So I could see that happening. That's not bad. Surprise endorsements could count as an October surprise. We had the big October surprise in October of 2016 with the Hollywood Access tape, grab them by the you-know-what. That didn't seem to work. And so a lot of us were surprised when they didn't try something similar in 2020, but then with the voting irregularities, it kind of made sense on why would they even bother with that? We have this other plan that makes an October surprise.
I think they've run out of bullets. They've run out of bullets. They've gone through pretty much the lexicon of what they could possibly.
And I know you know this, but for the slow people out there, he means that as a metaphor. Metaphor bullets, not they're really shooting bullets at him.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Well, that too.
Good stuff.
But, it is kind of troubling and scary, to be honest. You've got some kind of some warning signs. Merrick Garland going out and saying he's going to jail people that are going to interfere with the election and all this kind of stuff. I mean, they really are trying to put the screws on. What might actually happen here.
As wrong as I've been about so many other predictions, I don't know if they can get away with it twice. I don't know if the American people because they can't do the COVID lockdown again. They tried a few other times to redo the COVID lockdowns, and after a while, the American people were like, "Dude, no way, we're not falling for that again. That's BS." And in the same way, no planes get hijacked after 9/11. Why? Because we don't let them. We're like, no, we know what happens here. We're just going to take the plane down over this open field in the middle of Pennsylvania if we have to. Thank you very much. So I don't know. I hate to say I don't think they could do it again, or it'd be really hard for them to get away with it again. How about that? Lisa in Fort Worth, you're on WBAP. What do you foresee as an October surprise, ma'am?
Well, I'm sure there is a surprise. However, for those of us who like to early vote, I want to encourage everybody. People have... Okay, so I'm in Texas, and the last couple years about the open borders, and I'm sitting, in my car listening to the radio about the open borders, and I'm thinking... we can't do anything about it. Why do they keep talking about this? Because nothing's being done, right? Nothing's being done. But we can vote, and we can vote early because people out there listening, you can vote anywhere in your area, and instead of waiting for the one day where something may happen with your kids going to school or an emergency or it's raining. So early voting, to me, is like, that should be a no-brainer, right? And thanks to you for letting me share a couple more points. I'm not politically vocal, but I do support Trump. I do wish Trump would stick to his platform because he's amazing. Instead of focusing on another person or what other people are not doing, if he would just stick to his strengths, I believe God would really catapult him just on what he did before and what he can do and will do. And third, I'm wondering if during the election times, like the places where early ballots are dropped off or things happen that could be, seemingly not legitimate.
We'll just say sketchy, right?
Sketchy. If there could be volunteer teams with iPhones, sitting there 24/7, like you're getting ready for a concert.
I mean, Dinesh D'Souza put out a movie of all kinds of people stuff in those early drop-off ballot boxes, and no one really cared. But I think you may have made a bunch of good points. Thank you very much for your call. I'm just kind of out of time here. I have a feeling like Lisa wants to just stand up and say that in public places every once in a while, and she just felt like doing it on the radio show, so that's pretty cool. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk to Jeremy Rosenthal, a DFW attorney, about the ketamine queen who may be behind the death of Matthew Perry from Friends. Coming up in 5 minutes on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.